Okay, we're on. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Burlington, and welcome to this, the 83rd edition of Burlington and Beyond. We have another special guest tonight, one that is directly involved in the upcoming election, and we thought that you would like to hear what he has to say with regard to some of the issues here in Burlington. But I think probably the most important thing is that he has a chance to introduce himself to some of you who may not have had an opportunity yet to meet Nick Priest. I'm happy that he's here. I am going to be the questioner tonight, and so most of the time is going to be given over to Nick to explain to us who he is, why he's running, what he hopes to accomplish, anything and everything about Burlington that we can think of. I wish I had spent a little more time trying to find out some of the questions that you folks out there might have, but I think probably I've put some questions together. I think maybe I've covered some ground, and we'll find out. Nick, welcome to the show, and thank you for coming, especially on short notice.
Oh.
It really wasn't that, I contacted you, what, two days ago, day ago? I can't remember, but
This morning, I think.
this morning it was. That's
But
quick.
that was, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I when I got your voicemail, I said to myself, how could I pass up the opportunity? It's just this good fortune that, you had the opening.
Sure.
So thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Tell us about yourself, anything and everything that you can think of with regard to when you began in Burlington and how you came here and how we got to the point where we are now.
Oh, that's a long, we're going to be here for a while, folks.
That's
Buckle
fine.
in. So I've been in Burlington my entire life. I was raised here. My father was a police officer in town. He retired.
Now I remember. Now I remember.
Yep.
What was his first name?
Chris.
Chris Priest. Yes,
Yes.
I do remember that.
Served this town for nearly 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's, enjoying retirement, and sometimes he'll watch his grandkids.
Okay.
But we'll get to that point. So I was raised here. I grew up here through the Burlington public school system. Always an active kid. When it came to activities and being engaged, wasn't always necessarily an active kid, but I tried to stay involved. Student government. I did theater. In high school. There was like 1 year that I actually went out and played football. It was a great experience. It was probably some of the best shape that I've been in my life. Model United Nations. I mean, I really tried to, just take in everything that, I could as a kid. I was very fortunate, having grown up here. We have some of the best teachers.
Yeah.
I can go through and just name some of the best teachers that just really influenced my life at key moments, that make me the avid reader that I am today, the involved individual that I am today. Just knowing how to reach the kids is just so important. And
reading is critical.
Reading is so critical. What's tough is, unfortunately, a lot of kids in school, they think that reading is work.
Yeah.
And when the school system makes reading work, when a teacher makes reading work, a kid disconnects.
Yeah. That's when they turn them off.
Yeah, and fortunately, I had some great teachers who knew how to make reading interesting. I mean, I'll never forget 10th grade, Mrs. Dalton. We were reading Fences, right? Which is an amazing play. If you haven't read Fences, I highly recommend it. And we were reading it, randomly assigned roles, reading the roles, and we got to, I think it's somewhere in the middle. There's this beautifully written monologue about the father says to his son, I don't have to love you. And he goes into this whole monologue about the importance of, being a father and supporting his children, and making sure that his children are provided for and, given the best that he can give them.
Lesson of life.
It really was. And I remember reading it in class, not knowing what I was reading.
Right.
and getting to the end of it and just having to take a really deep breath,
Yeah.
being forced to say the words out loud,
Mm-hmm.
and experience the words and what was being said was just very impactful. And that's just one of so many experiences that I had. So I tried to stay involved, and then I went away to college, and not far. I wound up going to Worcester State College, now Worcester State University, because I really, I value public education, and being at Worcester State provided me the opportunity to be close to home. And
Just far enough.
exactly, yeah.
Just far enough.
I'm sure my father would say,
Independence.
a little further would be better, but but yes, exactly. It provided me the independence, that as a teenager, seeking higher education, was looking for.
Sure.
And it also provided me the opportunity to kind of make my own way,
Yeah.
which was really nice. And so I got to Worcester State. I wound up refounding the television organization there,
Oh.
called Lancer Vision Television. And I'm very proud to say it's still running to this day, which is fantastic. And just having the opportunity to establish something, to work with my peers, work with kids and faculty that were older than me,
Mm-hmm.
in a position of leadership.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing better than hands-on education,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And to have the opportunity to, trial by fire, right? What's working, what isn't working, have to adapt. Like those are skills that you don't necessarily learn in a classroom or behind a
Those
book.
crushers are precious.
It's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate.
But I didn't realize you were you got involved in television work of one kind or another.
Yeah, yeah. So way back in the day, my friends and I, we loved to write,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the best ways to kind of bring those words to life was here,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
we all volunteered time, and that was the deal. You wanted to borrow equipment and go have frivolous adventures with your friends. Volunteer time. So we volunteered our time, and we wound up producing shows that I think run on the Closet Classics here.
Yeah.
And just again, frivolous things that kids' imaginations, and we had a great time. And
So this being here brings back some memories, some
it
good
does.
memories.
It does, yeah. In fact, this space was just built, I believe, right around my junior year of high school.
Okay.
And I graduated in 2003. So somewhere in my high school time, we had just built out BCAT. It used to be across the hall, in a much
Right.
smaller space.
Right.
And we are afforded this space, which is very nice and can accommodate quite a bit. So then, as fate would have it, I was brought back to Burlington after graduating college. I had my first job at Nuance Communications here in town,
Mm-hmm.
and it was at
Or were they on the turnpike?
the-
Nuance Communications.
yeah, they're over across from Wayside Common,
Okay.
in that complex there,
Yeah.
if you will, that campus of buildings. And just started the rat race, as it were, right? I had gone to school for communications, and something my parents had told me when I was young was, always keep doors open, right? Especially in communications,
Sure.
where there are so many avenues, right,
Right.
to kind of broach. Keep your doors open, and know kind of that if one door happens to close, you can move to a different.
Exactly.
And so when I was in college, I took just about every course under the sun when it came to communications, and really had a broad understanding and ability, right, to write and to design and to do video work and to market and advertise and fast forward now to today, it's been just over 10 years, and I've been working in the marketing advertising industry. Right now I work for an agency called Cambridge Biomarketing in Cambridge.
I've heard of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're a great company, and we work specifically in the rare disease healthcare space.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, as a writer, it's my job to understand all of the data and research that goes into whatever the disease is and whatever the possible treatment might be. Understand that, and then communicate that out to both patients who are most likely being misdiagnosed for a number of years.
Is this an individual thing? I mean, when you write to them, or Or do you have publications that you put out? Or?
It's written tonally to be geared toward an individual or to a
Okay.
small population, but yeah, you have to think that we're writing, brochures. We're writing,
Okay.
video scripts. We're writing posters, and
It's just about everything to get the word
just
out.
about everything. Websites. So when a client comes to us, a biotech company, a life sciences company will come to us and they'll say, we have a therapy that's either coming to market or is in market, and we need to get the word out. And one of the best ways to do that is to position the disease, because a lot of folks don't know what the disease is. It's a rare
Right.
disease. So how do you position that disease so that doctors and patients alike begin to understand it, begin to have awareness about it, right? Because a lot of doctors, even if they have a class on rare disease, if 10, 20 years goes by.
So you're writing a lot of medical terminology that you might be using, or I mean, it's a specific field.
It is, yeah, and it's.
How did you is this on the job learning? Have you learned all this there, or is this something that you prepared for?
So I've always had an interest in science. I always say if I was any smarter, I'd be a biologist. But a lot of it's on the job training. I was fortunate enough in a prior career to have, in several. It's been a long running thing. Nuance had a healthcare division. The company that I worked for after that, we had some healthcare clients. So as I grew in my career, it was almost like I was being set up to take on the next thing.
Okay.
And so, and to your point about it being medically heavy, only in some cases. Right? When you talk to patients, you don't want it to be medically heavy, right? You have to take that complex, medical
You're
jargon.
trying to simplify it for them.
Exactly.
You want to reach them. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Make it so they can understand it and not be afraid of it.
Yeah.
Right? Because oftentimes they're reading this and they're still undiagnosed. Right? So they're receiving this information and they're saying, well, if I had this, what does all this mean? Right? But it's important to relay the information as simple as possible. As effectively as possible. And then for doctors, it gets more technically complex,
Sure.
Because we don't have to necessarily hold the same reins back as we would with patients. But we still want to make sure that we're being effective communicators, right? And that they're getting the right information, the key takeaways. It's very important. So a big part of my job is, reading through all the research papers, reading through all the clinical studies that have been done, understand the data, understand the research, working with a medical team, which is great. I'm very fortunate at Cambridge Biomarketing to have a staff.
A team on site?
Yeah, so as a part of our company, we have a team of medical experts, and they work with the writers and the art directors to ensure that what we're saying, what we're showing, is as accurate and as factual as possible. Because everything that we do, when we submit it to a client has their own, it's called an MLR team, a medical legal review team. And that internal team on the client side has to review all of that and approve it and say, okay, it's fitting within our guidelines for our prescribing information, it's fitting inside FDA guidelines, because when things are submitted to the FDA, when things go out to the public, they have to fit all these requirements. And everything that we say has to be factual, has to be able to be fact-checked, annotated, and set forth. So I can't say boo without it being a factual thing.
So you're dealing with a lot of detail. Well, before we get into running for office and whatnot, tell me more about your family, your background. You spent your life here in Burlington. Are you married and
I
you
am.
have children?
Yes. So
and they're in school here in town?
One of them is. I met my wife in college, Jen, and we got married almost 6 years ago now. We're coming up on our 6-year anniversary in June. Right, hon? I got that right? She's going to be listening. No, it's
Of course she is.
Definitely in June. And we have 2 wonderful kids. Our daughter Penelope, who's 4 and a half, she goes to the BECC here at the high school, and she's a whip. I tell you, my gosh, I mean, it's amazing to see, how quickly a kid picks up on and adapts to scenarios. How she can pick up things contextually. I mean, to have
4.5, they are sponges.
they are, oh my goodness,
everything.
incredible, absolutely
Everything,
incredible.
Yeah, which is good.
It is. I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah.
And then our son Quentin is 1.5, and he is.
Oh, he's brand new.
He is brand new, and he is a boy's boy. He loves his cars. He loves his dinosaurs. Loves his Legos. It's incredible. He's just picking up more words. We taught the kids sign language,
Sure.
so that they can communicate during the time that they're learning how to speak,
Yeah.
which is immensely helpful, especially around dinner time.
Yeah.
More please is always huge. Because I tell you, if one more dish goes across the room, he is just incredible. And then actually, at the end of this month, April, my wife is due with our third.
Oh,
So
what's her name again?
Jen.
Congratulations, Jen.
she and I are thrilled. We are
Good.
absolutely tickled pink.
That's great.
And yeah,
So you have every reason to want to see Burlington not only succeed, but to be the best possible town that it can be.
yeah. I've
I-
been calling Burlington home, since 1985 when, I landed here, and I want to keep calling it home.
I have, in the past, I've told some of the people who shows that I've been here since 59, 62, I guess we built our home. And I can remember telling my mother that we were going to be buying property in Burlington, and her response was, "That's part of the frontier. Why are you going over there?" And it was in those days.
Yeah.
It was very, very rural.
Right.
How it's changed, which leads us to, so you've got a very particular background. You certainly know how to use language. You have been a member and a partner in Burlington for quite a bit. So you have, I think, every reason to want to see Burlington succeed
Without question.
in many, many different ways. How do you see Burlington now? Do you think that, for example, one of the big issues in town are these huge homes that are being built, and one has to wonder if some of the people who can't quite afford these big homes are being pressured to either leave. Some of the older folk, like myself, for example, I've been here for since, as I say, since 62. Surely 62, 63, we built our home. I think it was around that time. It's been so long ago. I mean, I can't tell you how it's changed. And so I don't want to see people in my category, being pushed out. I want them to be part of Burlington because I think they've earned the right to be here. How do you feel about all these big homes that are being built?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's a very interwoven question.
Mm-hmm.
When you start talking about how Burlington's changed over the years, which it has, without question. The Burlington of 30 years ago is not the
Yeah.
Burlington of today, and that's good in certain respects, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want your town, you want your
To
city
grow.
to grow and evolve, right?
Right.
We have to stay as current as possible and as attractive as possible for both residents and businesses, right? But you raise a great point. I think since we've been back, we've seen a lot of houses in our area come down, and I hear the same from a lot of folks that these smaller houses, whether it be ranches or splits or
Even a lot of the slab homes
Yeah.
in the area where
Right.
I'm located, there were, I think there must have been 50, 60 of them at one time.
yeah,
And now, one by one, they're being bought up and being replaced with big, big homes.
right. And that's a multifaceted issue because you have your seniors who can't afford to stay in their homes, mostly because of maintenance, right? The house is paid for at this point,
Right.
Both in cash and in sweat equity, right?
Mhm.
There's been so much blood, sweat, and tears poured into that
Sure.
home. It's not just a house anymore; it's a home.
I can personally attest
No,
to that.
absolutely. Growing up, My father was is a very handy fella, and he'd put his 3 sons to work. Let me tell you. So
You mentioned not to change the subject, but you mentioned your dad was a policeman here in town. How is he? Is he living locally? Or is he doing well?
Yeah. Him and my mother are both still living in the house that I grew up in. You know, and they're deciding what their next step is. Right. So as they move into their 60s, you know, they have to. Sorry, mom and dad, I'm giving your age away. You know, they have to decide. You know, do we want to try and maintain the home that we've built?
Yeah, exactly the question that my wife and I.
Yeah, and it's a very difficult question.
It
right?
is.
I mean,
it is.
You live here for 30, 40 years. You raise kids here. Burlington's your home, right? And to say that you're going to sell and then you can't buy something else in Burlington, you can't stay here without carrying either a mortgage or having to severely downsize is very difficult. So we're unfortunately aging folks out. But then to your point, because we're taking these homes who they wind up falling into a state of disrepair, contractors come in, they buy the house, they knock it down, and they build what we deem a very large, very expensive home for Burlington, right? I'm sure if we were in Belmont or Winchester, it wouldn't seem as large. But this
wouldn't
is
be out
Burlington.
of place at all,
Right.
And here it's noticeable.
It is, and what's happening now is we're changing, the look of our town, but we're also making it difficult for young couples and families to come into town. And I mean, like I said, my wife and I we bought here. We just got in. The house was being sold as is, and we were very right. Just timing was everything in that case. And it was funny. We had been looking for over a year. And we stopped. We said, you know what? We're done looking. We're going to just stay at the apartment and we're going to figure things out. And then a week later, this house came on the market. And I said, look, it's right around the corner from my parents. Let's just go take a look. And we fell in love with it. And we said, this is going to be our home. This is where we're going to set up shop. I said it earlier this evening, this is where we're going to build our American dream. Right? Because I firmly believe that the American dream has evolved into one of self-ownership, right? You can take the American dream and make it what you want it to be, right? Which is the beautiful thing about America, right? And about
very much so.
We are afforded the freedom and the opportunity to build what we want, and that's our dream. If you want to live in a small house or in a condo or whatever it is, and that's your choice, and you have the right to do that. But we're changing the scope of the town, and what's happening too is we're also developing areas that were never developed before. We're throwing up 3, 4, 5 houses in an area that was 2, 3 acres of wooded area. So density also becomes a problem too. But we need to be looking at it, and it's tough because when you consider it being private property, in terms of town control, in terms of what is built, where. But I think
I'm just looking for, I couldn't recall the name of the center at Simons is the official name of the big project where 19 and a half
the old
used to be.
19 and a half lot, yes.
Yeah. I like it. I like what I see. And part of the reason is that it seems to connect more so than in the past. I can remember way back when there was a big store, in particular the IGA Food Line. It used to be up at the top of the hill. This is going back quite a bit. But it seems as though the top and the bottom of Burlington have always been disconnected. Okay, this big project is dead center on the hill, so it connects. That hill is a little bit of a problem, and I think that this is ideal in the sense that it really fills up that space between that and the bank, the Rockland Trust. Now you've got something continuous all the way up the hill.
Right.
So the center, the government center, and the bottom, where most of the businesses are located, starting with the center at Simons, I think is going to be good. I think it brings the whole town closer together. How do you feel about that?
I agree. So taking a step back, you know, one issue that I see is happening in Brooklyn. We're only 11 square miles. We're not a big town geographically, right? Land is a premium.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes to what we're going to do with regard to municipal buildings. I personally could have seen us as a town purchasing that land and having ample space for, you know, things like a new community rec center or, you know, new public safety building that would have still tied in to the town common.
Yep.
But would have been town land. That didn't happen. I think that what's going in is nice. I think that, to your point, it's going to help tie.
I think it's going to be kind of nice.
Yeah.
And I remember interviewing Mr. Duffy, who was one of the principals involved in developing that, his family. And one of my pointed questions was, well, what are you going to put in the center? You know, how can you dress it up so that you can attract people to come in? Whether it's a couple that's just getting married, they want to have their pictures taken. There's something really nice, you know?
Yeah.
And he said that they were working on it, that they intended to put something that is, it's a big area.
Right.
It's a big area. I mean, if you go in the center of it, you know, even with the buildings, the way they're built up, there's a wide open area there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good stuff that they can do.
Agreed.
The other thing that's interesting, and I hope it comes to pass, my understanding is that the town has first dibs on the last building, not 33, the one they just developed. I guess it must be 35,
Oh,
the building
yes.
on the corner there.
Yes.
Whenever that building, if it ever goes up for sale, the town has first dibs at it, which would be interesting because then you've got the annex, the town hall, and you've got those two buildings, you know, right in a row,
Right.
and the common directly in front of it. So that is a big, and I'm aware of it when they decorate the common, you know, with the Christmas lights. You look, you know, they seem to be all over.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know, I'm not the one that's running for office. I want to know why what would you like to do? What do you see? How do you feel about the Board of Selectmen? How can you, what can you do, or what would you like to be able to do
Sure.
as part of it?
Yeah. So I have no ill feelings toward the current Board of Selectmen. I think that as a governing body, they're doing their best to ensure that everything that every issue that comes up is being addressed. You know, they have great experts backing them. The department directors and the departments of this town
Yeah, they are good.
phenomenal. I went to the Board of Selectmen meeting last Monday, and we listened to John Sanchez, the director of the DPW, talk about the water issue, right, and the possible remediation for that. And it was a thorough presentation. It was great. I had already known some of the information, but to have it presented to me, I mean, it was nice to hear it presented as opposed to trying to read.
John is very capable.
He very much is.
And,
yeah.
and he's very amiable. I always enjoy talking to him.
Yeah, absolutely. But what spurred me to run, I've been toiling with the idea of becoming more involved in the town. You know, I said to my wife a couple of years ago, I said, now that my career is at a point where, you know, things are working out well, you know, we've got a couple kids, you know, where we've gotten through a big hump in our lives, as it were.
Right.
Right. Not to say there aren't many more ahead that I look
The
forward to.
nucleus is there.
Yeah, but we've formed our nuclear family, as it were.
Sure.
I said I want to start giving back. I want to find ways to get re-engaged with my town, my hometown, place I grew up. How am I going to start doing this? And you know, at first I was toying with the idea of just, you know, subcommittees or whatnot. And the more that I looked at the town from a big picture standpoint, the more I started to see what we were missing. And that's communication. It's one of the biggest things I see missing. You know, when you look at voter turnout, when you look at the biggest complaints that people have, it all winds up laddering back to communication, right? People feel as though they're not involved, as though, you know, there's not information out there, or, you know, there's just a lack of excuse me, a lack of feeling as though we're all being engaged.
Everyone is involved in,
Right.
in the overall project, yeah.
Right. And it
But
shows.
you know, it's hard sometimes. Some people are, there's a mindset that says all too often, I've seen it, we're here, this is our little world, this is our home, and don't bother us, I don't want to know anything. They are the ones that are to be reached, because everyone should be involved one way or another in what the town is and what it's doing. It can be very, very simple. It doesn't have to be terribly involved. You don't have to be a selectman. You don't have to be on any of the boards. But you do have to be aware of what's happening in town. I think that's critical.
Sure. And
so maybe that is communication.
Right. And there will always be the people who just don't want to be involved. And that's fine. That's your prerogative.
Yeah.
Right. But like when you look at voter turnout, right, we have 17,000-ish registered voters in town.
Right.
And on average in a local election, 2,000 people come out to vote.
I know.
That's a massive
Right.
disparity.
Yep.
Right? How do we start reaching people? Right? We have the Connect 5 system, right? Our reverse 911. We could utilize that on a more consistent communication basis to put information in people's inboxes. We could.
It's interesting, eh?
Yeah. Working in marketing and advertising, strategic initiatives are what drive a lot of what we do, right? And so whenever people talk about advertising, they always talk about, the big idea, the concept, right? The concept is just the kicking off point. It's just, the initial, lighting of the fuse that's going to run forever, how long that campaign is going to run for, right? So what is really important when you think about marketing and advertising is the strategic initiative. How do you set up goalposts along the way to engage people and keep them interested and keep them coming back and invest them in what you want them to invest them into? I always say I'm very fortunate to work in a career that I love. I love to write. I love to communicate, but it also benefits people, right? So it marries a lot of the things that I have kind of built in my life, and so the thought of running for selectman just married to that perfectly. The idea that I can help people, right, while increasing engagement and communication was just, it was, I mean, there's probably a better word for it, and as a writer I should know, but perfect.
Yeah, it's exactly not only what you love to do, but what you actually are doing, and you want to bring that to, as much as possible, to the Board of Selectmen, or actually to any part of town government.
Well, look, when you talk to folks, right, if they don't know even what the Board of Selectmen is, right, you have to educate them there. Right. So like the disconnect is so wide, right?
Yes.
Then there are folks who know there's a Board of Selectmen and that they're the leaders of our town, which is only partly true because we have a representative town meeting, right? And the representative town meeting holds a fair amount of power, right? And in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen, that's where a lot of the decision making, there we go, happens.
Yep.
But if people are looking to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen have an opportunity to be the engaging body, to be the outgoing leadership that helps drive the citizens to where they need to be, right? It's always been, well, it's your civic responsibility to be involved. It's your civic duty. So we're going to do government, and when you're ready to get involved, come on in, right?
Okay.
The model has to shift a little bit, and government needs to be a little bit more proactive in that outreach, in that connection, in the passage of information, right? In the distillation of information, so that we can spur people to want to be involved, right? Our attention is torn in so many different ways now.
Oh.
I mean, it used to be you had the TV, you had the newspaper, the radio. That was it. Now you wake up in the morning and it's a constant barragement of media, right? And as the individual, we are now forced to cultivate our own consumption, right? So if it's not top of mind,
we're the ones who have to select assuming that we take the responsibility to begin to select each and every day.
Exactly.
I think in part what you're saying too is that you want to be able to try to reach those people who are not involved, who should be. You pointed a moment ago to the number of votes in all of our elections. As a matter of fact, they all fall short.
Yes.
It's not just Burlington; it's everywhere. There's
It
just
is.
people.
It's a national
and,
issue.
There's just a sense of, I can't be bothered. I'm not going to make a change. I'm not going to make a difference. So
Right.
don't, I just live my own life and leave me alone.
Right.
That doesn't work it doesn't work well in our society at all.
Right.
Yeah. So
And
how to
we're-
reach them?
And we're seeing that, right? And we're seeing it nationally,
Yeah.
right? This growing apathy, this disconnection from, right? And then where does everyone pour out to, right? Presidential elections, right? Because it's in the media all the time,
Yeah.
right? And two, because for some reason we now feel as though that's where we can affect change.
Mm-hmm.
No, local. You can affect change locally, right? And you see it, right? I mean, look at what happened with the school start time, right? Dr. Conti was kind enough to open up, community forums for people to come and voice their concerns, and people came in droves, right, to voice their concern. People who do not come out normally
Yeah.
were out.
Yeah.
How is this going to
I
affect
heard
our
that.
kids?
There was quite a turnout.
It was.
Yeah.
And look, I'm not saying that we're going to get that every time. I'm not saying we're even going to get 80% turnout consistently. But if we're at 10, 15%, let's strive for 20. And then from there, once we secure that base, let's up it again. Don't stop trying to reach out and connect with the community. We're pockets of communities now.
I've always thought that if the issues that are involved, and I think most of the people involved here locally, I think they do try to, but I think that if the issues are really pounded upon, if they are put out there and made even more public, then there's always a certain part of the population who is going to pay attention and they're going to be concerned. But I mean, like what you're expressing in that is to reach the people who normally don't get involved.
Well, let's take the water issue, for example, right? There was a screening study done, I believe it's 60 or 70 pages-ish. Don't hold me to that. It's a pretty involved screening study. The average Burlington citizen is not going to read those
Right.
60 or 70 pages, right?
I
So even
agree.
if the town makes it available, which they do, the average citizen is going to go, okay, so you did a study, I know there's an issue, you're working on it, but that's all I know. And now, misinformation is given the opportunity to spread, right? So how can we, as local government, take that 60 or 70 pages, simplify it, and push to people proactively and say, folks, we know this is going on. We are on top of it because we're Burlington and we're awesome. Here's what we've got. If you have questions, contact us. We're going to hold the community forum. Come. And it's tough, and it's not going to be easy, okay? You're going to do those first couple community forums. You're going to, put them in, and no one's going to do anything. If it's going to feel like nothing's changed, right? It's going to take time.
Yeah,
Because, it's like when my wife and I bought our house, okay? Because the owners had, grown older and weren't able to do everything to the house, certain areas, certain aspects had fallen to a certain state of disrepair, which I do not hold the owners at fault for because that happens. But, the first couple of years in our house, my wife said, it feels like we're not making any progress. I said, hon, we're fighting a war that hasn't been fought in years. It's going to take time, right? We have, it's slow, it's plodding, but it has to be done. And when you get to a certain point, you're going to feel that alleviation. You're going to know you're standing on higher ground than you were before, right? And that's what we have to work toward, knowing that the next 1, 2, 3 years are not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it, right? So, back to kind of the original question of, why I wanted to run. That's the big thing, is garnering communication.
So one of the major premises is that you want to be able to get information out. You want more people involved in government. I think that's a terrific plank to run on. I really do.
When we have community-driven discussions, we are afforded the brain trust of more people.
Right.
When you only have a certain number of people in a room having a conversation, that conversation is going to reach a certain point where it can no longer go any further.
Right.
Okay? After a certain amount of time, people begin to become like-minded, right? Because the brain anticipates what's coming next, right? And it begins to adapt.
Sameness.
Exactly. And we are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
Heaven help us. I remember being
Yeah.
in school, the
Yeah.
teacher was like, there are no assigned seats. And what happened? We all had the exact same seats for the entire year, right? It's just
Human nature.
exactly. So, open it up, you know. I went to a Board of Health meeting, was it last week. I sat down, I was listening, and they were going through all the various, concerns, topics, and whatnot, and they reached Hazardous Waste Day. It's a great day to bring out all your hazardous waste and get rid of it, right? And they just wanted to announce to the public that latex paint would no longer be taken, right? It's not hazardous, just dry it out and throw it away. They said if it's more than a dryable amount, grab kitty litter or something to that effect and pour it in, then let it absorb and dry. And Dr. Ed Weiner, who's on the board, had
He's been one of our guests.
and he's a fantastic
Terrific,
guy,
yeah.
long time Burlington resident.
Yep.
And he had a great idea. He said, why don't we have bags of kitty litter for folks who are still going to wind up bringing their latex paints to Hazardous Waste Day? Because not everyone has a cat, right? Not everyone is just going to go to the store and buy sand.
Sure.
They've already taken the effort to haul their latex paint to the Hazardous Waste Day. Now they're going to haul it home, right? So have the kitty litter there for them. It was a great idea because it wasn't rote. It was innovative, right? But innovative in a very simple way, right? Everyone says you have to be, creatively inclined to have creative ideas, right? It's not true. You can have a creative idea in any space, in any vertical, in any occupation, right? Being creative is not solely for those who work in a creative field, right? But having that, and then I was telling the story to somebody, and she said to me, she goes, I know about a company that takes certain latex paints, and they refine it and resell it to people. They can tint it, and there's flexibility to it. But that's how they get their. They don't make latex paint. They take and recycle it.
Recycle it.
Like it's an amazing idea. We should bring that to the Board of Health and let them know about that too.
Yeah, I've
right?
never heard that.
Neither had I. So now here we are, two guys who hadn't heard of it, right?
Yeah.
The Board of Health, it hadn't dawned on them at that time. Here's somebody out in the community who has an idea, right? So it's just a perfect example of why we need to be informing the public to receive information. Communication is a two-way street, right? But we have to, as the local government, take the onus and the responsibility that the people will not respond until they are given something to respond to. And if we can be proactive and give them that information ahead of time.
I think your premise is a good one. You're talking about communication in so many different ways. How to communicate, how to get people involved, how to get the message out, how to ask them to contribute, to volunteer, to come up with ideas. So it is all about community. I guess most of life is about communication one way or another. There's a practical side too, though.
There is.
I'm thinking in terms of the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
I mean, there are issues that are that the public normally doesn't get or doesn't get involved in that they have to vote on. How do you see yourself as a selectman? Do you think that you would be? I'm sure you think you can be effective. Have you had a chance to look at what some of the issues are that they have been currently involved in? Some of the ways that they've voted. Are you pretty much in accord with what they're doing?
Yeah.
As a board now here, the way they stand.
Yes. Like when you look at and this is a great example of how they're already being proactive. The Friendly 40B that they helped Institute for Affordable Housing to ensure that Burlington stayed at the 10% or higher, right?
Yep.
when you look at, in fact, Mike Runyon and I just had our Chamber of Commerce forum right before the taping of this show, and we were very much in alignment with regard to the water issue in town, right? So when it comes to like what the board is currently doing on the practical side of things, and how I align with things, I think that we'd align fairly well. I don't think that we would agree on everything, but I think that's the beauty of any type of organization.
Sure.
Is the meeting of minds and the having of discussions.
Yep.
But yes, no, I've been since I moved back, I've been keeping not an eye on, but I've been keeping abreast of issues in town, and when the school start time was raised, even though my kids are little, I went and voiced my opinion. Because things like that, as a resident and as a community member, are important to me, right? And there was a perfect example of scientific research stating something, and us having to make a decision around it. And that wasn't even a board of selectmen issue. That was a school committee thing. Sure. Right. But I think it's great that we've decided to opt for it and see what happens, right? Because if we're not doing everything for our kids, then we're not setting up the future for success. Yeah. Quite literally.
Exactly.
Quite literally.
They are the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you the first person in your family to be or to consider running politics? Has anyone in your family been involved?
That's a great question.
I know your dad was a policeman. He was here for, I can't remember, it was a few years, I know. I can't remember exactly, but I do remember. Like, I didn't know him personally. I wish I had. Yeah. But I do recall hearing his name and whatnot. But no one else in your family has considered running, which in many ways I think is great. If you're the first person that has decided that you want to get involved in the politics of the town, especially since you're a longtime member of the community. I think that's terrific. But there isn't anyone in your family that has run?
Yeah, not that I can think of off the top of my head. A lot of my family comes from different, various law enforcement backgrounds, which is interesting. I have a cousin who's a police officer up in the Essex area. My uncle was a longtime police officer, and he was chief of police in a couple different towns. He's now a private investigator. My aunt works at the Woburn Courthouse. So I mean, there's a big law background, and when you talk about me getting involved in politics, I don't like to think of it that way. I'm getting involved in the community, right? I think that at the local level, at this level, it's not a political game so much as it is a community. Community game.
I agree.
Right.
Yeah.
We aren't vying for bills or legislation. Yes, there are bylaws that we adhere to, and we have to uphold the law and uphold the rules of this town. But we aren't lobbyists. We aren't politicians in that sense. What we are is community leaders. We are people who care about the place that we call home. So I guess when someone says why are you getting involved in politics, I say I'm not. I'm getting involved in the community. And I'm getting involved in the community.
That's a nice way to look at it. Nice way to express it.
And it's where I think I can affect the most benefit, right? It's where I feel as though my abilities and my skills will best serve the town. Because it's true what they say, the needs of the many do outweigh the needs of the few. And if it means, extra time in the evenings and weekends to ensure that the place that I and my family call home is the best that it can be and is constantly looking to be the best, then yes, I am willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah. I think you're the most significant strength that you have that you can offer is probably much better ways, or at least better ways, if not the best possible way to communicate, to get information out to the people, and also probably most important is how to get people involved, more involved in what's going on in town. I think that is true. And you look at as we mentioned earlier, you look at the numbers voting, it's they're almost pathetic.
Yeah, and not even just involved in like local government, but you think about the 4th of July committee, the 4th of July parade,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I sat at the Board of Selectmen meeting and listened to Mr. Runyon talk about how he was asking the board for some more funds, right? And he was just expressing how even though he spearheaded the return of the 4th of July parade and the recent success we've had, the board is small. And it's very difficult with 5 people to accomplish, right? So after the Board of Selectmen meeting, I told Mr. Runyon, I said, whatever you need. I said, let me, whatever I can do, right, as a member of this community, let me do. And I think, you know, if even just a handful of folks could find something to give a little bit to, right? You know, we always talk about, you know, overextending ourselves, or, you know, there's not enough time for this, I'm too committed to that. I get it, you know, as you know, a guy who works full time with a
Yep.
family, growing family, I get it. Time is valuable. You know, but what we need to be doing is, you know, giving back a little bit. Because when all of us give a little,
It amounts to
Exactly.
an enormous effort by everyone. Yeah.
yes.
Do you think we should be a sanctuary city?
Whew. I don't know. That's a loaded question.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's a hot question. I don't know. I think that, you know, as a town, we have to abide by a lot of mass state law, and I think that we should take guidance from the state of Massachusetts. You know, if the state feels strong about one thing or another, then, you know, then we should probably fall in accord. You know, there's no point in creating dissonance at various levels. You know, if you're going to build a foundation, or I'm sorry, if you're going to build any building, the foundation can't be shaky.
Can't be shaky,
We
right?
have to be working together. So,
Okay. All right. I had a whole bunch of it. I'm trying to think, or if it doesn't quite work out for you this time, you're a young man. And I like what I hear in terms of your willingness to contribute, and I like what I hear when you're talking about communication, the importance of communication, reaching out to people, getting people involved. I think that's all good stuff. Would you run again?
absolutely.
You would.
That's
Good for you.
That's the short answer. Between now and the next election, I will be getting much more involved.
Exactly.
know,
You will have learned a lot too.
Absolutely.
Just the committees. I mean, I noticed you were at, I'm on the capital budget committee, and you were, and you come in and you had your pencil there and you were taking notes and trying to figure out what they were talking about and what was going on. I think that's critical. I think that is really critical, and I'm assuming that you've done that for a lot of the other meetings that have gone on. So little by little, you master the whole problem, the whole ball of wax, and at some point, you begin to feel that your confidence has grown to the point where you can answer most of the questions as well as anyone on any board.
Right.
You know, so they are important things to do.
Yeah, and it's you know it's one person's never going to know everything, right? But to know a lot, like you said, is very important. And then to rely on the people who are the experts, right? We have all these various boards and directors of departments for a reason. If one man could do it all, then, you know, that's what we'd have, right?
Right.
But it's important to know the scope of what you're getting involved in, and be able to, you know, speak in kind language, right? You know, when you're talking to DPW, you have to understand what they're talking about.
Sure.
When you're talking to the Board of Health or to Parks and Rec or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you have to know what they're talking about. And yes, you know, I would say that, you know, if my efforts do not end in a seat this go around.
So for you, it's an ongoing quest. you're hoping that you make it this time, and I, from what I've seen and what I've heard, and I'm happy that you're here tonight. I understand you a lot better, and I'm sure that some of the folks out there, if not all of the folks out there who have had a chance to watch us, I think probably they feel a little bit more comfortable, especially people who have not, who have not had a chance to meet you.
Yes.
All good stuff. I don't know, we're running, can you
Couple
believe
minutes to go.
we have 2 minutes left?
Plenty
I
of time.
can't believe it. Where did I told you, it goes by unbelievable. And
It does.
look, I
know.
have 2 pages of, most of it you've already taken care of. In any event, I'm very happy that you, especially since I called you last minute, I'm really happy that you were able to come. And win, lose, or draw, I'm hoping that, and this is what I usually tell the people, in a year from now or less, depending on how things go, I'm hoping that you'll consider coming back and talking to
I would
us
love
about,
to, yeah.
as a citizen or as a member of the board.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. We have 2 minutes left. What would you like to say to the general public about Nick, about your efforts and your hopes?
My efforts and my hopes. Well, I will say that my efforts are always ongoing. To your point, and to kind of modify what you said, it's not even necessarily a conquest, right? But it's an ongoing effort to not only be a better person, but to make the place that I call home a better place for everybody. And that's an ongoing thing, like I talked about nearly an hour ago now. The idea of learning on the job, or trial by fire, right? It's critical in certain senses, that you learn and you grow and you evolve and you adapt and you take what you've learned, your mistakes, and you grow from those. And whether or not I become a selectman this go around, I'll go again next time, and and then as time goes, I will be constantly reevaluating to say, is it my time to step down? Where are my abilities at that point best serving the town, right? Maybe in a number of years I'll be best served on planning board. Maybe it'll be Board of Appeals. Who knows? Only time and experience will tell.
Right.
But I want to be serving this town, because for as long as I've been here, Burlington has been a great place. But we can never accept status quo.
Exactly.
We can never rest on our laurels. We can't.
Yep.
And that goes for anything in life.
Oh, we are
there we
just
go.
about, we've got 5 seconds left.
All right.
We just want to say good night and thank you, and don't forget to vote and consider Nick here. Okay, thank you very much, and hope to see you next show.